Did Michael Jackson really do it? In this video, we will decode the enigma, the star, the mystery, and maybe the villain, Michael Jackson. We will look at his astrology in order to answer the questions of whether he did what he was accused of having done and how his karma, his soul, and his mission should be understood and remembered from a spiritual perspective. Let's go. Okay, so Michael Jackson was clearly, unmistakably, undeniably a great star, one of the greatest stars of modernity, and somebody who left his mark on all of humanity at some point. I think in the 90s, when it was at its peak, there wasn't a person on earth who was not enthralled by and enchanted by Michael Jackson. And he was perhaps the most popular person on the planet for some time. And then his story took a very sad turn. He was accused of having abused children and having done inappropriate things with a series of children on his farm. And his career was, it never kind of fully recovered again. And he was mired in all of these issues, these problems that he had, or power struggles that he had with various producers. And then he died. He found an untimely end just before he was able to launch his sort of hailed as a comeback tour that he was working on. Now, Michael Jackson, he clearly, definitely had some very endearing traits. He was somebody who seemed very innocent and had a very good heart, seemingly, when he was seen as somebody who prioritized the humanity, had love for humanity, wanted all of humanity to advance through kindness. But nonetheless, a figure like this has been seen and has been presented to us as having had a very, very dark side, and having done things that are not excusable for a soul, for a person, especially not, for nobody, obviously, but for somebody who's in the public light, even less so. Now, the astrology, if we look at the astrology, it should be able to answer what actually happened there. Because obviously there's a lot of people who taking different sides in this debate. And to this day, the debate continues. People are saying that, look, he was framed. He was, he didn't really do these things because he was going against the big music producers. He didn't want to play their game anymore. He called them out, and they decided to bring him down. That's why they framed him, and they fabricated all of these stories about it. And there's a lot of fans, a lot of people who are very touched by Michael Jackson, who believe in his innocence and believe that he was a great person who was framed like this. On the other hand, there's people who are coming up with, finding these details around things that he did and that are condemning him, damning kind of evidence that keeps coming out to this day. So the astrology, it really allows us to see the behind the scenes and behind the surfaces, behind the appearances, and see into kind of have an X-ray vision into the soul of the person, right? Into the soul of the person. And it doesn't mean that everything that exactly happens is like forensically mapped in the astrology, but what it does mean is that the karma of the person, the karma of the incarnation, we can see in the astrology very clearly, and that allows us to understand what the challenges were that this person has, and therefore we can understand better what they did and what they are likely to have done with those challenges and with those recurring issues in their life. Because the karma that you have, the birth chart that you have, that you're given, it's kind of earned through many lifetimes. It's earned through multiple lifetimes, both with the difficulties in it and with the great opportunities in it, right? It's not something that's just random, that's just kind of, that's just there, right? It's very, very deliberate and very meaningful. So we have Michael Jackson's chart here, right? And that's what we're going to do in this video. We're going to look into his chart, and we're going to try and answer these questions about whether he did what he was accused of, and why, if so, right? So this is the chart, and we have, there's some controversy regarding the birth time, whether the time is correct or not. I can show you very quickly and clearly that this is the correct time, right? Because in this time, this is the most most commonly used time, right? This is the most commonly used time. And obviously what I've done here, what I always do, I've added all of the asteroids that allows us to get so much deeper in the story, right? If you just look at the chart, which is what 99% of astrologers do, they don't look at the asteroids, and they miss all the nuances of the story. Obviously you do get the major powers in life, right? So it's great if you read a chart just with the planets, great. You will understand how you have to navigate your life. But if you want to decode how the story actually plays out, you need the asteroids and the stars, always, right? So once we add them, we can see, for instance, very clearly that this birth time is correct, because you have here on the IC, exactly on the IC, this is literally like on the second on the IC, right? On the IC is your home, and you have here the asteroid called Neverland. Neverland is on his IC, right? Neverland is the name of his ranch, of his home. He actually had this famous, big ranch called Neverland. And this is a mansion or whatever. And this is on his IC. So it's written in his fate, in his karma, that his home is Neverland, right? This shows me that this chart is correct, right? This time is correct. And in this chart, so, looking at the big parameters, obviously, here's somebody who has a lot of issues, a lot of family-related issues, especially if you look at the placements of, I have just have to place myself, make myself a little bit more, so okay, now it's better, now I can see it better. So if you have somebody who has these heavy moon aspects, right? The moon is square Saturn, so very difficult upbringing, difficult relation with the family, the mother, and so on, right? And then in addition to this harsh and hard and difficult childhood, right, where the moon is in Pisces, he experienced it as a dreamer somehow as a child, but then was all of these heavy expectations that were coming with Saturn, right? This could be the father too, right? The heavy expectations that are hitting him as a child. And then in addition, there is this opposition with Sun, right? Moon opposite Sun. So moon opposite Sun, people who are born in full moon is obviously the time when everything is coming to fruition and to show, it's showtime, right? Showtime. Full moon is showtime. So, you have that tendency. People are more able to express their fuller inner being, in full moon children. But a lot of full moon children, similarly with the square of moon to sun, they have problems and issues of uniting their feminine and masculine aspects, right? This is always going to be an issue if you have a moon square sun or moon opposite sun in your chart. There's going to be a big challenge in life around uniting the masculine and the feminine aspects of life, right? This is going to be a big challenge always. So a lot of times with people who have not solved this challenge very well yet, you will find that they have problems with their sexuality, or they have problems with their gender identity, what it's called nowadays, right? So they have basically some issues with not knowing how they should integrate their masculine, their feminine side. Maybe they reject one part of it. Maybe they over-identify with one part of it. Maybe they can't really deal with it in some ways, right? So you have a lot of times confusion around these sexuality and gender when people have these type of constellations in their chart. It's harsh aspects of moon and sun, right? And then, okay, so I'm not going to go into all of the details of the personality and so on and so forth, because that doesn't help us understand whether he did this or not. We need to look into the stars and the asteroids, right? Because the personality, okay, great. Again, as I always say, if you just look at the planets, you will get a great understanding of what type of personality somebody is, which is super helpful if you just want to navigate through life, because you know what the energies are that you have to deal with. But it's not so helpful if I want to understand the fate and the karma and the final karma of the person. I need to have the asteroids and the stars for that, right? So, okay, he has a Jupiter-Neptune conjunction as well, which is the person who is, and this is on the star princeps. So he's a boss level. He has boss level spiritual sense and intuition and higher intuition that leads to success, right? Or artistic success sense, right? Which is Neptune, Jupiter as well. Boss level artistic sense that leads to success, right? And now, when we want to get deeper into the chart and understand what's actually constellated here, we can start by analyzing some of these constellations that are around the planets, right? So the sun is in Virgo, right? Which is very, very kind of fitting. He's kind of a very careful guy, you know, a delicate, little bit delicate guy, right? And this sun is with Polyhymnia and Apollo, right? Apollo and Polyhymnia. So Polyhymnia stands for, is in the Greek mythology, the song, right? The song that survives in eternity, right? This is literally how deep this stuff goes. You will be shocked. You will be shocked when I show you. When I can show you it again, with every chart after chart after chart after chart, right? Polyhymnia stands for the song that survives throughout eternity. And Apollo stands for, it was the Greek divinity of music and of arts and of creativity, right? So these two are conjunct his sun, right? So, okay, the artist, that is who he is, right? He is the artist, the creative artist, divinely inspired artist who creates this art that stays, right? That remains beyond his life. Then on the MC, this is his public role, what he will be seen and remembered as, and what he will be seen and experienced as by generations to come, by the public. You have here a very interesting thing. You have Saturn, right? There is this harshness, he has a very harsh and difficult final karma and final outcome, right? MC is also your final outcome. When it's all said and done, that's the MC, right? So he has Saturn here. It's a harsh and difficult final karma. Grace Kelly, the asteroid Grace Kelly, which stands for the star who has a tragic end. Grace Kelly was a star who has a very tragic end. She had like this accident, she died. And then there is here Elvis. Elvis, right? Well, he was like an Elvis level star, right? He was an Elvis level star. Then you have here Icarus. Icarus is the mythology is like the figure who flew too high and got burned and fell. Flew too high and burned, right? Spirit is here, and Orpheus. Orpheus was in the Greek mythology another singer, was a figure who was even able to overcome death because of their powerful ability to sing, right? So he's here too. And you got what? Lucifer. Lucifer exactly on the MC. So Lucifer plays a big role here. Lucifer is on this MC. And Fantasia. The fantastic star, superstar, who flies too high and falls, and who is tempted by Lucifer, right? Who is tempted by Lucifer and has a tragic end. This is written in his chart as his final outcome. This is his final outcome when it's all said and done. Now, what do we say about whether he was, guilty of what he was accused of? He was accused of having done some very inappropriate and bad things, specifically with children. So, what do we have to look at to understand this? Well, there is actually a couple of stars that stand for perversion or for deviance, that is karmic, like bigger than normal, not just the normal kind of whatever. There's some range of when people have some I say normal, but it's not. Some let's say manageable or not like vast type of deviations that this, but then there is the big deviations, which everybody will be understandably against and understandably see as such as well, right? And for those, you have a couple of stars that stand for this. And these stars, they are Algol, okay? Algol is a major one, right? Algol is kind of the star that brings in greed and sexual deviation that to do with greed. Then you have Ras Alagwe, which is here in Sagittarius, is up here, is actually on his MC, together with Saturn, right? So all of what I said around that harsh destiny, the harsh destiny of the star, the superstar who has a tragic end, is somehow intertwined with these sexual, deviancy as well. Plus, the third one is here is Alfard. Alfard is exactly with Mercury here. I'm going to talk about that in a sec. So Mercury and Mars is what we have to look at. The Mars here is with Nessus. Mars is your drive, your sexual drive as well, is with Nessus. Nessus is basically the sign of the abuser. Okay, is the asteroid that stands for abuse, the active abuser. Okay, Mars stands with Nessus, and it's on Algol, and it's with another asteroid called Rotario. Rotario stands for Freemasons or secret societies. Okay, so we have here a sign of the abuser. Okay, the abuser, Mars with Nessus on Algol, right? The abuser that is around, something to do with deviation and something with secret groups. And this is in a square to Mercury. Mercury stands for what? Mercury stands for children. Okay, children are ruled by Mercury. And Mercury is on Alphard. Alphard is the second star, which also stands for abuse, right? Or stands for sexual deviancy. And this Mercury is with the asteroids Hecate, right? Balaam is greed, is the demon of greed. The demon of greed is here, right? Aphrodite stands for love, okay, or sexuality. And Hecate stands for dark rituals, right? And they're all with Alphard. And Alphard, again, is the third star, which also stands for sexual deviancy. So there's 3 stars already. All 3 of them are exactly placed. And this one especially, right? So the abuser, square, children, and here you have greed, right? Greed and rituals and sexuality, right? This is all constellated very clearly in his chart, right? Very clearly in his chart. And then in addition to that, you have here Venus. Venus is here with Ishtar. Ishtar is another asteroid that stands for dark deviations, certain type of, perversions or deviations. And that's with Israel, the asteroid Israel. And these two are in opposition with, you cannot see, it's not shown here, but in opposition with Chiron here. Okay? So what is this? Well, there were a lot of, and this is both also in a wide conjunction with his Mercury as well. There were a lot of why is Israel there? Why is Israel there? Well, there were a lot of his producers that I worked with were Jewish, right? And he actually, initially, he had a great relationship with them. He loved them, he had a great relationship with them. His Israel is on Venus. But then he fell out and apart with them, right? He had some falling out with a lot of his producers. And you can see here that his Venus is in opposition to Chiron. Like Chiron is the pain, right? The point of the pain and so on. He fell out with them and he had some issues with them. And when we continue now to look at his day of death, right? That's how I'm going to do it. What happened actually to him? How did he die, right? But just let me recap this, what I just showed you. Let me recap this. As sad and unfortunate as it may be for any one of you who was deeply touched and moved by Michael Jackson's works at any point, his astrology shows very clearly that this was a soul that over lifetimes did some certain things and was then incarnated into a position where there was a great tendency and proclivity to be an abuser of children. That's in his chart. I showed you that very clearly, right? So it doesn't mean that when somebody has those constellations that are so clear, like really written with, exactly written in there, it doesn't mean that, okay, therefore this is their fate, this is definitely what they're going to do, they have no chance. No, because the person has free will, and it means that you can actually act against what's written in your chart. You can actually find a different way to realize what's written in the chart. You can find different ways to express that energy. You can always find different ways to express the energy. You can always evolve. You can always overcome. You can always step beyond what you have done in the past. We have that possibility. We can find in yourself, you can find Christ. You can find Christ consciousness. You can overcome what you had before and what you were, what you were bound or what you had set up before and what you had a proclivity for. Even though it's going to be very difficult, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be very difficult. You will always have that karmic temptation. You will always have that pull, much more so than somebody who maybe over many lifetimes has already freed themselves of certain things. But you can always do it. But nonetheless, when you look at Michael Jackson and what he actually did, he actually, there is these stories. It was very clear. He went with a lot of these children, right? Frankly, he went with a whole lot of these children. He went to this farm, and what are we doing? Like, why are you taking these children into your farm? Like, there's like a, what is an adult man doing with a 12-year-old or 10-year-old boy or whatever that you would take into his farm with him, right? And so when you look at that he did that, and then he said, no, I was innocent, I didn't do anything, I had no idea, and so on, whatever. Like, that was what he's saying. But when you look at his chart again, and you see that this is somebody who has that proclivity and who has that tendency, then the only way that he could show and prove to us that he actually fought against this and overcame this and never would be if he had never even put himself into the situation. If he had never put himself into the situation, then you could say, okay, he evolved, he overcame, he stood against the demons in himself and that he had himself created over past lifetimes, right? But that was not the case, unfortunately, with Michael Jackson. So the verdict on him has to be that he did not overcome. He actually put himself into that situation, and that makes it very difficult to believe that he was not guilty, right? Makes it almost impossible to believe that. And now, when we look at his time when he died, when did he die actually? What was it? 2009 in the June of, I think it was June, end of June, sort of June 29. I think it was around here. Okay, June. It was in June. I don't actually have the exact time. It won't take me so long to look it up, but it's this time. It's around this time. It's June, end of June 2009, right? So this is all we need to know here, because you have here Chiron, transiting Chiron and Neptune, opposite his Mercury, okay, and within a wide opposition to that Venus that I mentioned. So, and they're in the 12th house of enemies, right, of hidden enemies, right, of hidden enemies. And during that same time, Mars was also squaring here, right? So when he died, and this is very clear. So Chiron, the wound, right? And when it's in opposition, Chiron in opposition to Mercury, so the wounded message or the healer who wounds you is the sign here. The healer who wounds you. And with Neptune is toxicity, can be toxicity, right? The toxic healer who wounds you through deception is written in his chart here, right? For the time of his death. So, yes, he was, in all likelihood, very clearly actually, the constellations at his death, around his death, are very consistent with somebody who was poisoned or who was misled and deceived and then died due to that. And it's possible that it was because of the fights that he had with his producers and with a lot of people that he was kind of starting to have fights with, that he was starting to engage in fights with. But nonetheless, even though he may have had some legitimate grievances, very clearly with some of the producers or some of the people that he was standing up to, very clearly, nonetheless, we have to say, and we have to be truthful here. We have to be truthful here, because the truth needs to come out. Only if the truth comes out can we learn and can we evolve together, right? And in all truthfulness, Michael Jackson is somebody who, even though he may have had a beautiful soul, even though he may have had a kind and beautiful soul, sometimes exactly the people with the kind and beautiful soul are tempted and tested the most by Lucifer. And he was tempted and tested and not just by Lucifer, by the demons of greed and demons of perversion, and he failed the test. And he failed the test, and he found his demise and his tragic end. And we can see this in the charts, very clearly written. Now, if you want to find out about yourself and how we can decode your own destiny and make sure that you maneuver and navigate throughout life in the best way possible, you can work with me. You can find the link below how to do that. And write with the video, write in the video below in the comments. Let me know what you think about this. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. Let me know in the comments. It's a great way to start to have some conversation in community. How you think about this, who you would like to see next, what you would like to see next, how this makes you feel, the revelations that I shared with you. And until the next time, be well and be blessed.